All right, we're live. Welcome everybody. Tonight we got MasterchiefSpiff versus Wannabepudge. Spiff is going to be playing DT's list from the Northwestern Regional, I think, this past weekend. DT was running Imperials. I think he had 2x E-Jets, 2x E-Riots, at least one officer, and I think Palpatine. I'm not sure. We'll see. Spiff knows it. Yeah, DT obviously is a very good player, best in the world. So anytime he introduces us to a new list, everybody wants to see what's up. This is the first time I will get to see it in play. Spiff is putting his command deck together. And on the other side, we have Wannabepudge. Pudge is running an Imperial list. He has Han with Rogue Smuggler, Gideon and 3PO, which are pretty much required in any any Rebel list these days. He also has 2 Alliance Smugglers, which have been really popular. Run 2 of them. They really help running objectives, opening doors, that kind of thing. And for 2 points, you get that extra activation that's very useful. And then to round it out, he has a set of Elite Alliance Rangers. They are playing Raining Freight, so this is Alliance Rangers' best map. Especially if you get the bottom side, they can pick off all the way to the top side's deployment zone round 1, so very strong units. He also is running Drakata, which is one of my personally favorite new units. Drakata has an ability Demolish that allows him to place a Rubble token, and anyone adjacent to that Rubble token takes 1 damage, and Drakata takes 1 strain. That Rubble token space becomes difficult terrain. Drakata has 12 health and a built-in block. He rolls blue, green, yellow with +1 damage, +1 accuracy, surge for +2, and surge for shrapnel. Now, shrapnel is a very interesting surge ability. You can use it to ping 1 damage on every unit, including the target unit, within 2 spaces of the target, which is very strong. You can also use it to just do Blast 2, which can be very strong as well, depending on your target. Drakata is a heavy weapon Wookiee, which doesn't have a lot of synergy with the other Rebel units that are strong right now, but it does have some very strong cards, especially Collateral Damage, which is basically 2 free damage on any unit within 2 spaces of the target after the attack resolves. There's also Lock On for heavy weapons, which can negate a miss. He's probably not running that in this list, although it's a decent card in certain lists. Expect to see some Hunter cards for the Rangers, probably On the Lam for Han. It's a bit difficult to make a command deck with this list. This is a list that I've played around with, but the traits don't really have a ton of synergy. The deployment groups are all very strong, but the command deck will be a little bit lacking compared to the strength of the deployment cards. On the other side, this Riot Trooper list has some very strong command card synergy between trooper cards like Grenadier. Actually, Reinforcements gets played with Elite Riot Troopers. Since their figure cost is only 3, you can bring an Elite Riot Trooper back which gives this list a ton of health, especially with Zillow. So expect to see that put to good use. Now, that play of reinforcements may have caught some people off guard, but by now we've seen the list, we know what it does, and there's only 2 figures in the group, so you can try to play around reinforcements. It is difficult, but it is possible, so we'll see if that happens in this game. So yeah, they're just setting up. It might be a minute. They're still making their command decks. At least Spiff is, that is. So I'm gonna mute myself for a minute and wait for them to get ready. Looks like we're almost ready to go. Spiff just putting the final touches on his command deck. Let's see we can get him to reveal his command card, or his deployment cards. Some command cards to watch out for in Wannabepudge's deck. He's probably running Tools for the Job, which can sneakily be played by the Alliance Smugglers to get their stun off pretty consistently. He might be running New Orders, which Gideon can use to reactivate the Elite Alliance Rangers. Or Han Solo is good to reactivate also. Even Dracata is pretty decent to reactivate. He's probably running Officers Training, which Han or Gideon could use to draw an extra command card. Any figure can use it to reroll, which is useful. He's probably running all the usual cards, planning, take initiative. He might be running Make My Own Luck, which is Han's version of take initiative, where instead of having to tap a deployment card, it's just Han has to go first. Okay, so now we get to see Spiff's deployment cards. He is running 2 jets, 2 elite riot troopers, 1 officer, Palpatine, Zillow, and Rule by Fear. So this is a list with a ton of health. The elite riots have 7 apiece, so that's 28 health from the riots and another 28 from the jets. So 56 from those, plus the riots could be reinforced for 7 more health each. And all of those units have defensive bonuses between Agile on the jets and I guess it's just called Shield on the Riot Troopers, giving them a block token. So that is pretty much even more effective health. So expect this to be a pretty hard list to crack. Now, they are playing on a map that gives a big advantage to Rangers, so we'll see if that advantage comes into play. Some interesting nicknames on Spiff's units. We have Hulk and Thor, Tango and Cash, Boba and Django, and Ron Man and Falcon. Meanwhile, on the other side, we have Ned, Lucky, and Dusty as the Elite Rangers. Most Rebel lists have Hera, which gives that extra it gives that extra movement point at the beginning. This is actually pretty unique to not have Hera. I guess most iterations of this list that I've seen have dropped Drocata for Hera and Jin. That 8th activation is really useful against 7 activation mercenary lists that are running Devious. So that's why I think the preference usually for Hera and Jin. That does not seem to be an advantage here since Spiff is only running a 6 activation list. So that 8th activation would not have gained anything. So I haven't really gotten to look at Spiff's list yet in action. Han, our Jedi Luke, rather, is very good against the regular riot troopers since he can kill them in one hit and their shield doesn't do anything. I would assume that he'd be pretty decent against the elites. He would have to do 2 attacks to kill them, but um, I I feel like he would match up pretty well. Now, Luke doesn't really match up very good against the jet troopers. Their agile can really hurt him. Um, and it takes for Luke 2, sometimes even 3 attacks to kill a jet trooper. Um, but yeah, I'm looking forward to trying out my Jedi Luke Han list against this list. Obviously DT's running this list, so it's definitely a high calorie list. Um, but yeah, I think Luke would be a good option. Seems like the main 3 lists that are kind of emerging from the 3 factions are uh, some version of this Han smuggler list in Rebels. We've seen it with Elite Alliance Rangers. We've seen it with Jedi Luke, and we've seen it with Drokata or Hera and Jin. I've tried some other iterations, but they don't seem to work out as well. I tried to add some spy flavor in there too, but it just didn't seem to have the same synergy as stacking all those smugglers together. Um, I haven't played around with Imperials a whole lot, but Palpatine seems to be a top tier unit. A lot of people were running Vader Palpatine for a long time, but it seems like a lot of the top tier players have moved past Vader Palpatine and are now experimenting more with Elite Riot Troopers. We have seen 2 regionals where a Vader Riot Trooper combo has won. I think in Texas, um, and I think North Carolina. Both of those were Lucas Davidson. He won with 2 jets, Vader, 1 Elite Riot Trooper, something like that. Maybe he only had 1 jet, but I know he had at least 1 Elite Riot Trooper. So those units seem to be coming to the front as well. It is surprising to see a list without Hera. She is a very strong unit. Um, I think 2 regular smugglers over Hera is probably decent. You don't want a rebel list with 6 activations, especially with Han and Rangers. You want at least one of those groups to be going last in the round. Preferably, I like Han going last to set up that end of round shot. But Alliance going last, Rangers going last in a round is also very strong. So the game is underway. I guess I'll refer to these players by their names. Wannabepudge is Pat, and MasterchiefSpiff is Micah. Pat wins initiative. Takes the bottom side. Now Hutta is, I think, the most imbalanced map in the current rotation. Not that it's super imbalanced, but the bottom definitely has an advantage in that there's plenty of spaces to hide your units, whereas on the top side, there's only really a couple of places to tuck a unit. You can tuck a unit right in the middle of the map here. It's pretty easy to control this space. You can try to avoid your opponent by moving to either side of the map. But even there, it's possible for your opponent to get line of sight to you round one. So there aren't a great deal of hiding spots from the top. You kind of just have to let figures get shot at. Now, Micah's list is a list that doesn't really mind being shot at because it does have so much health. So he might elect to just put some riot troopers out exposed early. Pat doesn't really have a ton of attacking groups. He only has Drakata, Solo, and the Rangers. So he probably is going to get at least two big attacks off this round. Micah might as well be aggressive because that's really what his list excels at. He also could be holding reinforcements, which means it doesn't matter if an elite riot dies because he can just bring it back at the beginning of next round. So he might want to move down there, get Pat to waste some of his focused shots, and then see what he can do, but we'll see what happens. For now, Pat chooses to focus a elite ranger. The way that he has set up his figures, it looks like he'll probably use his other focus on another elite ranger, which means he'll probably set up an end of round activation with the rangers instead of Han. I personally like to focus Han and go for the last activation with him, but on this map, I think maybe the Rangers is the right play. On the other side of the map, Micah pushes Palpatine up with an officer and positions himself by the terminal. That officer isn't in a safe spot. Pat could choose to try to attack it if he wanted to. With his Rangers, it's not that far off, but we'll see. Now Micah chooses to move his riot troopers up into the middle. That spot that Thor is occupying is actually not safe. He can get hit pretty much from anywhere, so it's kind of an illusion of safety since he's behind that wall, but it looks like he may be setting up kind of a barrier to tuck some more important figures. Those riots, their purpose really is to take fire. So that might be his plan for now. Neither of them is in a safe spot. In my opinion, if he was gonna put them in a vulnerable spot anyway, he might as well have pushed them up as far as he could. I think I didn't count how many movement spaces he used, but I think he had a couple extra. I'm not sure where they started. If they started back here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He might have used 8 to get there, so that might be all they could have done. We are currently waiting on Pat's move. He will probably activate either his other regular smuggler, who may go to try to pick up a crate for 2 points. Actually, it looks like he's going to activate Han already. The thing about activating Han early is you want to leave him in a spot where he can get an end of round attack off. With Rogue Smuggler, you get a free attack at the end of the round. But usually when you do that, you leave him exposed to fire. Now Micah's list doesn't have any close range attackers. Pat goes for the kill here immediately with tools for the job, adding a red die. In response, Micah uses his block token that he earned. So we will have a red, green, green, blue attack. And it turns out to be a massive roll for Pat. He could not roll any higher than that. So 2 blocks, we're looking at 10 damage against 2 blocks for 8 total damage. Micah has no choice but to let the Riot Trooper die. He is playing a Zillow list, which means he can toss command cards to add blocks. However, Pat overkilled that by 1, so even adding a block would not have saved that Riot Trooper. I'm guessing that Micah doesn't care about that because he's probably holding reinforcements in his hand. Or he may draw it before the beginning of next round. Now it's very important for Pat that he finish off the other Riot Trooper in that group before Micah gets a chance to reinforce it, which means that between his Drokata and his Elite Rangers, he's going to have to do all he can to take care of that other one. It shouldn't be a problem for 3 Elite Rangers, especially since his Gideon will probably focus 1. Micah's job here will be to move his other set of Riot Troopers in the way to block that one off. We'll also see if Micah can take advantage of Pat's early play with Solo. Sometimes aggressive play with Han is indicative that the player is holding on the lamb. Or it could just be that Pat saw an opportunity to take out a Ranger and took it. Micah plays a little safer with his other figures now, moving them up the left side of the map. In that nook there, they should be safe for this round, especially since Han's already gone. Although Gideon can push Ned to this space here where he can move 1, 2, 3, 4 and get a shot on either of those jets. So like I said, there's no perfect hiding spaces from the top of the map. Not exactly sure what just happened there. Micah actually is playing Change of Plans, which he uses now to tap his Elite Riot Troopers that are still sitting in his deployment zone to reactivate his jets that he just moved into position. So with this play, both of his jets can get an attack off on Han. If Han is holding on the lamb, which is quite possible, if these jets come up to attack, that change of plans will be totally wasted. And in fact, it's going to leave those riot troopers back in the deployment zone where they're not going to get any useful attacks off until at least round 3. So a very high risk play there from Micah. Micah probably should have saved change of plans for later in the round to throw Pat off a little bit. If those jets come up and attack Han now, the Rangers will have shots on them. But Pat still also has to keep in mind that he wants to kill that other elite riot trooper, so that play from Micah does put some pressure on. Now Micah moves his other set of jets up to start doing objectives. He picks up a crate for 2 points. And he moves back to safety. So with the rest of Micah's list, it looks like at the end of this round, he's going to only have 2 figures in decent position to do some damage. The rest of his list is very conservatively placed. But keep in mind, even though they're back, doesn't mean they're safe. There's not really enough blocking terrain on this map to hide behind. So the only safety he has is from range, and against Elite Alliance Rangers, that doesn't make much of a difference. Pat might also choose to focus Drokata and push him up with Gideon. From this space where he can push Drokata, Drokata could move 1, 2, 3, 4 and get a shot on those Rangers. If he does focus and push Drokata, Mike is going to have to activate those jets before one of them gets shot. If one of the jets dies before he can activate them, this change of plans would be a huge waste. Now Micah's other jet moves up. Now this time Micah chooses to put him in the corner, which like I said earlier is pretty much the only safe space that the top side has to work with. It's pretty difficult to get line of sight on this space in round 1, although not impossible. But you have to be up in these spaces up here. So it's a very safe spot for now. Pat just has Gideon, Drokata, and the Rangers left. He activates Gideon. Now we'll see if he's going to focus a Ranger or Drokata. He should probably push Drokata, or else Drokata, I think, cannot get any useful line of sight. He does focus and push Drokata, which means Drokata's in striking distance of both the jets and that elite riot trooper that has just 1 left in his deployment group. So from this space, Drokata can get a lot done. Drokata's rubble token ability is called Demolish, and he can choose any space within 3. So he could choose this space to get 1 extra damage on a Jet Trooper if he chooses. The nice thing about Drokata is he's really good at dealing the exact right amount of damage to finish off a unit. Basically, this is how it works. If you roll a surge, your priority is to use Shrapnel to deal 1 damage to your target and 1 to each unit within 2 spaces. Hang on, we're getting an attack against Han now. Now we'll see if Pat was holding on to On the Lamb. And the dice are coming out, 2 blues and a green against a white die. Han, of course, has Cunning, which means he adds a block for every evade he rolls. He's not next to 3PO, so he's not getting that automatic block plus evade. A nice looking roll. This would be 4 damage if Han does not have On the Lamb. Pat's not being quick to throw it down, so I'm going to assume that he doesn't have it. And he does put 4 damage on Han, so bad news for Han. Micah's gamble turns out to pay off for now. He actually moves the Jet Trooper in closer. Now his plan is to move Palpatine up to get another attack off with that Jet Trooper. The other thing is he also blocks off his Riot Trooper by placing him there a little bit. Although I believe that a weak defensive roll from Han there. Now we're looking at 5 damage against 1 block for another 4 damage. So right off the bat, 2/3 of Han's health is gone. And if Palpatine comes down and gets a nice attack with that jet, Han could just be dead right off the bat. This is why I like to save Han for the last activation of the round. In fact, Pat was holding on to On the Lamb. He probably should have played it after the first attack, because that would have forced the second jet to waste his action. I don't think Micah would have moved in and attacked if Pat retreated his Han all the way. The place where Pat is putting Han gives him an end of the round shot against this Jet Falcon. This puts Micah in a very awkward spot because now when Palpatine moves up, that jet isn't getting a very good attack off, and he's going to leave Palpatine a little bit exposed. We already see that most of his list is exposed, so he does pick up an objective as he retreats with the jet. Again, that jet isn't in a safe spot, so Pat here needs to do some damage before Micah can close in on him. Micah's closing pretty slowly considering his list, with his 1 set of elite riot troopers still back in the deployment zone. His list is spread very thin. Pat has a really good opportunity here to move some figures off the table. Looks like he'll probably activate Dracata now. He doesn't have to kill Falcon with this attack because Han is getting an attack off at the end of the round. So he might choose to move up and attack Iron Man on the left side of the map instead of Falcon in the middle. Or he might try to attack Hulk. If he does attack Hulk, he does have that option for Blast 2 onto Django. Dracata has surprisingly decent range with blue, green, yellow, and an automatic +1 range. When he's focused, he can consistently hit 6 range shots, even more. His minimum range is 4. With focus, it's 5. But he has a very decent chance of rolling at least 6 range. So the position he put himself in, he could either attack Iron Man or Hulk. The nice thing about attacking Iron Man, like I was saying earlier, is with that Demolish, if he misses the kill by 1 damage, he can choose to demolish Iron Man to finish him off. What I was trying to say earlier is that Dracata is like the master of finishing things off with all the different options he has between demolish and his shrapnel ability. He actually chooses to demolish before the attack, which in my opinion you should, if you're planning on attacking, you should do that first just to see the outcome before you decide to demolish. Now he's actually not attacking Iron Man, so that doesn't matter. He is attacking Hulk, who does add a block. So a built-in +1 and a focus means that he's rolling 2 greens, a blue, and a yellow. It turns out to be a very weak offensive roll against a very strong defensive roll. Right now we're looking at 5 damage, Surge for +2, and Surge for Shrapnel, for a maximum of 8 against Hulk. Now, that would be blocked down to 4. He might decide to do 3 instead, and that would do 2 damage to Django. Or he could do 4 and 1 to Django and 1 to Boba. Take some time to think about his options. He knows he has to finish this riot off before the end of the round. Otherwise, Micah almost certainly will reinforce. He does choose to ping 1 damage onto Boba, Django, and Hulk with Shrapnel, which means Hulk takes 4, leaving him with 3 health remaining and no block token. I'm not sure if Pat even has to waste a focused ranger attack against Hulk now. He might choose to try his luck with the unfocused Rangers and see what happens. Micah is going to move in now with Palpatine. I expect him to move Palpatine up the left side of the map to keep him safe and use Iron Man to attack Drokata. Or he could try to protect Hulk with Palpatine, although that exposes Palpatine to 3 Elite Alliance Ranger shots, which is a very risky play. Micah doesn't really have any good options at this point. It's going to be kind of a desperation. He also has to hope that Pat doesn't draw, take initiative, or his list is going to be half gone by the time he gets to go round 2. Micah chooses to tempt Han, which pings 1 damage on Han and gives him a power token, which means +1 damage on his next attack, which will be going to Falcon, I'm sure, at the end of the round. Now Palpatine uses his Emperor ability to order Falcon to attack Han. An interesting thing to note, Han never used his Return Fire ability, so he still has that available if he gets attacked. A terrible roll with Falcon and a quick clear of the dice from Micah. Falcon's attack doing 0 damage to Drokata with that built-in block. Drokata is actually a surprisingly tanky unit with 12 health and +1 block, although he does cost 9, so it does come with a price. I think he's a tier 1 unit, but I don't think he has the support to build a list around him. The only other heavy weapons that get any play are Elite Sabs, and they have kind of, they're a bit outdated, let's say. Spy is still a good trait, but they don't really have the health to match their value. I think they have 5 health apiece. Other than that, there's Wookiee Warriors, which actually have some of the best health to cost ratio in the game, but they're kind of one-dimensional. And Wookiee cards really aren't that great anyway, so it's not really worth building a Wookiee list. Sorry, fight Wookiees. But I think as a figure alone, he's very good. I think some more Wookiee command cards would be really helpful for getting him more table time. Micah leaves his Palpatine in a very safe spot. He's not. He is actually within striking distance for Force Lightning against Drokata for next round, but by the time he activates again, Drokata could move, so it might not be. This is a very tough map for Palpatine. Pat uses ready weapons to distribute 3 power tokens amongst his Elite Alliance Rangers, which means all of their attacks are getting +1. So he's going to attack Falcon, it looks like, with Ned. I guess he doesn't have confidence that his Han's going to finish Falcon off. The Rangers have a built-in Pierce 1, and they have Surge for +2. So this would be 5 Pierce 1, which would be 3 damage. Micah may choose to tap Zillow to negate the Pierce, but I'm not sure if it's going to save the Jet Trooper because it is going to be taking an end of round attack from Han. Pat rerolls, but it doesn't change the result unless he's holding on to Blitz. Actually, he's out of command cards, so he can't have Blitz or positioning advantage or anything else. So 5 against 3, he ends up doing 2 damage. I guess Zillow got tapped. It should have done 3 damage because of the auto pierce 1. Let me ask. I could be wrong. He takes a focused shot at Hulk, the elite riot that he's desperately trying to finish off. Ooh, not a great start. And a good defensive roll for Hulk. Hulk does only have 3 health left. Let's see what happens. This would be 6 damage. Pierce 1, which would be 4. Zillow is still untapped, so it could be just 3. And Micah could toss a command card. That Jet Trooper did take 3 damage. A reroll actually makes this roll worse. So now we have 5 Pierce 1 against 3 for 3 damage. And just tapping Zillow now would keep this Elite Riot Trooper alive. A very lucky break for Micah, especially because now Han doesn't have line of sight for his end of round attack, it looks like. So Micah finally catches a break. And it's a good thing he didn't tap Zillow before. So the Zillow tap comes out and the Riot Trooper stays alive. We'll see if that was worth it for Micah, who probably is holding on to reinforcements. Pat's Elite Ranger had to take the chance to get that kill, but he does block Han off. So I think that's the right play, even though it blocks Han, but just turns out to be a tough break. Micah is holding on to 5 command cards. Hopefully one of them is negation in case Pat has take initiative. He's definitely going to want to activate his elite jet troopers first, since they are in the most aggressive position. He's probably going to want to move up, and he doesn't really have a good chance of taking out Han. That would be his best play if he could find a way to do it. He could try to finish off one of these elite rangers. But he's gonna want to activate his elite jet troopers before they get finished off, because Falcon is right on the verge of dying here. Pat actually has a lot of options for his start of round. It's not great to start the round with elite rangers that aren't focused. You want to get 3PO and Gideon working on them before they activate. So he'll probably activate Drokata first. He could just move up with Drokata and drop a Demolish token on top of Hulk to kill him and to do damage to Palpatine and Jango. And that could open up line of sight for him to get an attack off on Palpatine. That would expose his Drokata, but for the right amount of figures off the board, it could be worth it. Initiative passes to Micah. Now this is where we find out if Micah has reinforcements. And he does. So there's 7 health back on the board. He chooses to place the new Riot Trooper in a spot that blocks Hulk off from attacks. Drokata actually does need line of sight to place his Demolish token. So he could put it up here, which would kill Hulk and do damage to Thor. But he wouldn't be able to maximize the output of that as if he had put it here or here. Fuel upgrade also comes out for Micah, which will make it a lot harder for Pat to chew through his jets. Fuel upgrade gives 5 speed to all of Micah's jet troopers, and it also gives them +1 evade. That can be really useful against Drokata, since his surges are so good. But since that came out, Drokata's probably not going to attack the jets. He'll probably try to finish off the riots like I predicted earlier. We'll see what Micah chooses to do first. It doesn't look like he can get much done with his riot troopers, so he's probably not going to activate them. He wants to be aggressive with his jets. Probably the simplest move would be activating these yellow jet troopers first, and he does choose to do that. Now, what he's going to target, that's another question. Drokata's definitely going to activate first, in my opinion, for Pat. I don't think that these jets can finish Drokata off. I think that's impossible. So, Micah will probably try to kill a riot, an elite alliance ranger before it gets a chance to activate, and yes, that is what he's going for. This jet trooper is as good as dead, so he might as well leave it in a position where Palpatine can order it to attack. We'll see where he leaves it. He'll probably try to pick up a crate with it and just leave it somewhere very aggressive. The roll is 4 damage and a surge, which is 6 damage against 2 blocks for 4 total damage. So, pretty decent roll. Jets are pretty inconsistent attackers without rerolls. Blue-blue-green is not the best attack. So, getting 4 damage out against a black die is fine. Now it's up to his other jet trooper to do at least 3 damage and finish this guy off. So he has 7 total movement points to spend with this jet trooper. He puts it in kind of a weird spot, so he moved 1, 2, 3, 4. So he had 3 movement points left, but he chooses not to pick up any crates. Crates don't cost an action to pick up, they only cost 2 movement points, so he should have at least picked up 1 crate with that action. I'm not sure why he chooses to leave movement points on the table. I guess he's not thinking about objectives right now. His other jet is playing Grenadier, which can target a space within 3 spaces. Not sure why he's targeting that space. So he actually does move. He moves up. So he has 4 movement points left. Grenadier does 2 damage to the Ranger, which is not enough to finish it off. But that's actually fine because Pat does not want to activate the Rangers first. So I think it's okay that that Ranger's still alive. Although Micah really doesn't have any other figures to move in. He can move in his other set of jets. They do have 5 speed. But all of his riot troopers are way out of position. He's going to have to be really aggressive with them this round if he wants to get anything done round 3. And I hope he's holding on to take initiative, because he really needs to start round 3 with initiative. Again, he leaves movement points on the table. He could have picked up a crate. He only used 3 movement points, so he had 2 extra. He could have had both of those crates and still had his jets in the same positions they're in. So 4 victory points left on the table for Micah. A little misstep there. Now, let's see if he put enough pressure on Pat to activate his Rangers early. Pat doesn't panic, activates Strokata like he should. Now he should move up and attack Thor. And he should try to shrapnel all 4 of those figures in there. That would finish Hawk off. He could potentially kill Thor and Hawk. Keep in mind, Thor hasn't activated yet, so he doesn't have that block token yet. Strokata does have a decent attack with blue, green, yellow. It's not out of the question to kill a 7 health figure, although it would be a nice roll. And he would need to demolish as well. This is a 3 range attack, so guaranteed to hit. He actually places the rubble token first, finishing off Hulk and dealing 1 damage to the other riot trooper. Score 3 more points for Pat, and now an attack. Pat chooses to take his strain as damage on Drokata. I'm not a huge fan of taking extra damage on Drokata since he does have his defensive ability with +1 block built in. His health is a little bit more valuable than other units. This roll coming out is very weak, almost a minimum roll. We're looking at 2 damage, surge for +2, would be 2 total damage against the Riot Trooper, plus another surge for shrapnel, which will do 1 damage to the Riot Trooper and 1 damage to Palpatine and this Jet Trooper. So that's 3 total to the Riot Trooper, which is not nearly enough to finish it off. Micah now gets a chance to retaliate. His Riot Trooper actually is in range to get an attack off. Weakening Drokata is pretty useful since Drokata's surges are usually useful. Okay, actually, Drokata moves back, so now that really limits Micah's options. This Riot Trooper is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces away from Drokata, so unfortunately not in range to get anything done with any of his Riot Troopers. This is Micah's first time playing this list, and the inexperience with the Riot Troopers is showing a bit. Tango and Cashback here are complete non-factors, which you absolutely don't want that to happen so early in the game for a major portion of your list to just be completely out of the game. Micah decided to be very aggressive with his early play with change of plans. He saw that Han was exposed and smelt blood, but what he should have smelt probably was on the lamb. He decides to commit a ton of resources to taking out Han, and Han just completely dodged them. A big part of this game is actually predicting what cards your opponent has, and it's actually not that difficult to do sometimes based on where they're positioning figures and things like that. And some big cards you want to try to sniff out are on the lamb especially, but also cards like Son of Skywalker and IG-88's card that can reactivate him. And there's some telltale signs that these cards are going to come out, and super aggressive play, especially early in the round. That's a pretty big indicator that one of those cards is coming. So if you do see that, you want to just you just want to make sure you're not super aggressive in response to their aggressiveness. You don't want to commit too much and then have to pay the price when they end up having on the lam. Micah luckily does have range for Palpatine to move in and force lightning Drokata. He's actually playing Force Rush, which is surprising to me considering he only has one Force user in his list. Excuse me. Urgency is basically the same card except for anyone can use it. With Elite Riot Troopers, I expect that he probably is playing Urgency also just because those Elite Riots need the movement points to get in range. But if he's not playing Urgency, he should be. Force Rush is kind of a much more situational card. I'm not sure if he even needed to use it, to be honest. I guess he wants to move Palpatine up 3 and then back 2 to keep him safe, which that actually does make plenty of sense. The thing is, against Rangers, moving back doesn't keep you safer. Actually, moving towards them and boxing them in is the safer play. Because if you're within 5 spaces of them, they don't get a reroll. That makes their attack much worse. Blue with no rerolls is actually relatively weak compared to other 4-cost figures, even though they have that built-in surge. And now that Pat only has 2 Rangers, it's going to be much harder to get that, built-in Pierce. It's going to be much harder for him to get that built-in Pierce through, because one of them is going to get Zillowed. Palpatine's also within range of Falcon for Emperor, so Falcon's going to get an attack off on Drokata, and a strong one it's looking. 6 damage against 3 defense, so 3 damage. That's pretty decent against Drokata. He is pretty tanky. Like I said, Pat's choosing to take his strain as damage, so being at 9 damage instead of 7 is actually pretty significant in my opinion. He chooses to move Falcon back 2, but Falcon was actually in a very safe spot where he was. Now it looks like he is going to leave him, which is the right play. Falcon's much safer in that space than back on top of that crate. Micah is amassing a lot of damage on Pat's important figures. The strength of Micah's list is that it has so much health you have to chew through, and that strength could still come up late in this game. Again, Pat is in a situation where he needs to finish off this Elite Riot Trooper group before it gets reinforced again. It's much less likely that Micah's holding on to another copy of Reinforcements yet, but it's possible that he'll draw it. Another question is, where will Pat put his Han? Han is very vulnerable now with 8 damage on him. Like I said, he probably should have played on the lam earlier to save himself for more damage. but instead he chooses to try to position Han in a place where he'll get an end of round attack. That turned out to not work out either because the Elite Alliance Ranger blocked Han's end of round attack line of sight. So um, a little bit of a misplay from Pat on that. He could have had Han in a much safer spot. He chooses to actually move Gideon up and reposition Drokata to protect Han. I'm not sure why he felt his Han was vulnerable. I guess maybe he thought Django and Boba would try some long range shots. They do have 5 speed, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They could get within range for sure, but they would only be rolling blue-green. I think it's unlikely that they would have killed Han, but I suppose that is the play. In my opinion, he probably should have just activated Han and moved to the left to attack Iron Man, but I guess this is the safer play. I would rather have the focus tokens on my Rangers though. So now Micah's actually in a pretty decent spot. He blocks his wounded Riot Trooper off. He has a ton of health sitting right in the middle of the map. He's got pretty decent control of the map, and he still has his Riot Troopers left to go. Now, Pat does have a lot more damage yet to come this round, and he does get the first activation round 3 unless Micah has take initiative. So I'm not sure who he's going to work on, but he has to get some work done right now, taking out probably some jet troopers, at least Falcon. It's going to be tough to get to that wounded riot trooper. So if I was him, I would probably focus on the jets instead. And he also wants to keep himself at a safe range. He doesn't want to get too close to those riot troopers that are finally imposing themselves. Micah's main attackers have gone. All that's left are his 2 jet troopers. Since he has less activations, he's not going to be able to get the last say this round. Which means that if he wants to get attacks off with these 2 jet troopers, he's going to have to leave them exposed. In my opinion, it's worth it because there's already so many things exposed, it doesn't matter if there's 2 more figures. Plus that would get them in a much better position to attack next round. At a certain point, you have to stop playing cautiously with your units and you just have to start throwing them at your opponent. And I believe Micah's at that point, although we'll see. We'll see how he plays it. He is actually leading on points at 10 versus 6, doing very well on objectives. Like I said, he could have had 2 more, so it could be 14 to 6 right now, but he misplays his jet trooper activation. Maybe he forgot that he had 5 speed with fuel upgrade, I'm not sure. Micah plays cautiously with his wounded riot trooper, staying back behind the wall of health. He picks up another objective to make it 12 to 6. If this was a live tournament, I think Micah's list would have even more of an advantage. I think now it's becoming apparent why DT plays this list and how it works. This seems like a very good list for controlling objectives and just keeping your opponent from scoring too many points. So The strengths of Micah's list are definitely showing now. Even though he maybe misplayed the first round, he's still sitting in a very good spot. Pat is deciding to attack Falcon with his Focus Ranger, which Falcon only has 2 health left. Although he does have a built-in evade. I guess this is the safe play. But I'm not sure if the safe play is always the right play. Pat really has to start putting some damage on that wall. This should be a guaranteed kill. I'm not sure if there's any rolls that Falcon could have that would block this attack. He actually even adds the power token, which I definitely don't think he needed to do that. The nice thing about power tokens is you can save them for whenever you want. So that surge is canceled. We're looking at 5 damage, and he is automatically piercing the block. So this is 5 damage going through, which is 3 more than he needed. Really only 2 more than he needed because Micah could have tossed his last command card for a block. Although that last command card could be something good, we don't know. We actually haven't seen Micah toss any cards for blocks yet. So Pat is now dominating the kill score with 10. Keep in mind that 3 of those don't really count since they got reinforced. So Pat's score is more like 7 on kills and 3 bonus. Alright, now the unfocused ranger is going to start working on this wall of riot troopers. The automatic block token comes out. So he adds a block token. Now we're going to get a blue-blue attack with 2 rerolls. So he's probably going to reroll both of those. Very strong defensive roll. Right now this would be 0 damage. Like I said, the Elite Alliance Rangers actually aren't that strong when they're not focused. Which is why I was surprised that he moved his Gideon out instead of focusing. Now this is a much better roll. It's 4 damage, Pierce 1 against 4 blocks. So this would still only be 1 damage. And Pat probably will tap Zillow because Sorry, Micah will probably tap Zillow because he has no other. Pat has no other Pierce attacks. Pat drops Assassinate. I'm not sure why, because that's not enough damage, unless he has heightened reflexes also. So he drops Assassinate to make it 7 Pierce 1 against 4. Micah exhausts Zillow, obviously, to block the Pierce, which means all that for 3 damage. And a very early use of Assassinate there, although, like I said about Pat's list, the command deck doesn't have a lot of synergy, so since he had an opportunity to use Assassinate, he felt that he might as well use it. His only 2 Hunter figures right now are the 2 Elite Alliance Rangers, so if they don't get a chance to go, then he doesn't want to have a Assassinate wasted sitting in his hand. He's going to want to activate Drokata and Han early next round. In fact, I think Drokata is probably the better candidate for the first activation since Micah's units are all bunched up like that. Blast 2 could be absolutely devastating. And another Demolish token on top of that. That would kill Thor outright. Tango would have 1 health remaining. It's possible that Pat is playing a card like Collateral Damage that would be able to finish off Tango as well, so it's possible that Drokata could get 2 kills with 1 activation next round. It's also possible that Micah will draw another reinforcements and be able to place another Elite Riot Trooper in that big wall that he has right in the middle of the map. This match was looking like it was all Pats at the beginning, just based on the matchup. The Elite Rangers doing some pretty decent damage across the map, but it's definitely starting to swing, and it looks like Micah might be able to take control next round. We'll see what happens. Pat is moving his smuggler in to support the defense of Solo and Drokata here. Now, this probably means that Pat's going to try to activate Solo first in round 3, and then move him back behind this little defensive wall of a smuggler and a ranger. That way he can guarantee that he gets activations off with both Drokata and Han before they both die. Han still has to activate, and he is going to get 2 shots, both with power tokens, before the end of the round. He might move Han over to the left side of the map. Let's see if he can get him anywhere safe. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if he puts Han here, 1, 2, 3, 4. The only figure that could attack him next round would be this 1 Elite Riot Trooper, which could do potentially 4 damage, but it also could whiff, so. In fact, actually, if Han activated now and moved up and killed that Riot Trooper, he would be fairly safe placing Han over here on this crate, taking an end of round shot against the Jet Trooper, and then activating Han first next round and finishing this Jet Trooper off and tucking Han somewhere safe over here. He might want to leave Han back with the rest of his forces. 3PO is actually really out of position right now. Typically, when you're running a Han list, you want 3PO and Han to be on top of each other because Han gets that built-in +1 block for every evade, and 3PO gives him a free evade. So Pat decides to spread them out instead, which is hurting Han a little bit, although Han has only been attacked twice, I believe. Maybe 3 times. Actually, I think Han has only been attacked twice, and one time was that on the lamb. So Han did miss an opportunity to return fire against that first attack. The other 2 damage coming from Palpatine's tempt, and then 2 more from a grenade. That's how he's at 8. This is actually a pretty dangerous spot for Pat if Micah has a card like Overrun, which he's probably playing in his deck. Well, let's see what he could do with Overrun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He couldn't quite land on all 4 of those figures. Alright, so now it's the end of round. Looks like Micah is going to play aggressively with his jets, which is good. That's what he should be doing. All of a sudden, the map is looking very small for Pat. Alliance smugglers get a defensive ability where attacks against them require an extra 2 range to hit. I think it's called Slippery or something. This, of course, doesn't make a big difference against a jet trooper who's going to roll 2 blues and a green with his flyby ability. And he's using Element of Surprise to remove the white die, which means this is a guaranteed kill. Very aggressive there. But Micah really wants to finish off Drokata before the next round. He knows that his figures are bunched up, and he knows that Drokata has a lot of damage potential. Now it's Django's turn to try to see if he can kill Drokata. Since he's not within 2 spaces, he's only going to be rolling a green and a blue, which means he's going to need a max roll to have any chance of killing Drokata here. Drokata gets his built-in +1 block, but he also gets -1 evade from weakened. And actually a minimum roll for 2 damage. Actually just 1 damage. Very disappointing there. So only 1 damage on Drokata, but Micah shouldn't be disappointed. Now, round 3, he has a pretty good chance of killing either Han or Drokata before they both get to activate. Han is going to move up now and take 2 really strong attacks. He probably should try to kill at least one of these jet troopers. In fact, he doesn't even need to move to see Django. Micah does pick up a crate with his first jet trooper, though he is slowly amassing these victory points. The 2 are pretty even on material considering the reinforcement play. But Pat actually has a lot less health left on the board, especially if Micah gets off another reinforcements this round. An interesting play here by Pat. He's choosing to go for the Riot Trooper instead of this Jet Trooper next to him. I guess he feels like since the Riot Trooper doesn't have an extra block token, now is the time to go for the kill. However, that Riot Trooper was not in position to move in and attack anything, so these Jet Troopers that are up close are much bigger threats. Micah is getting the advantage of the defensive die rolls, even if he can't get the rolls on offense. A max roll on offense from Han. So it looks like it was enough to kill this Riot Trooper. He only had 4 health left, which is a pretty easy attack for Han, especially with that +1 power token. Now, Han has 1 move point left. And he's getting an end of round attack. Now, okay, so the reason he did that is becoming a little bit clearer. Now he has a lined up shot against this Thor Riot Trooper, which he's hoping to take out with Han's end of round attack. That would mean that Pat can't reinforce the blue group, but it doesn't make a difference because he can reinforce the red group. Which actually is even a little better because the red group, that would put the Riot Trooper in a little bit better position. Micah also has 2 very strong Jet Troopers. Here comes Han's end of round attack. This should be no problem finishing this Riot Trooper off. He does have a block token to spend. And now that Micah was able to draw cards, he could have some defensive shenanigans also. A relatively disappointing roll from Han, but it shouldn't matter. That should be enough. We're looking at 6 damage against 3 blocks. Han will probably reroll that 1 surge green die. There's no worse sides, it can only get better. There's 5 sides that are better, and that does it. That should kill the Riot Trooper. So that takes the Riot off the board, but it doesn't remove Micah's opportunity to reinforce. But still, exactly what Pat needed to take control of this game back. Now, with the first activation round 3, it's going to be a very important activation. If Micah can steal it, he could potentially kill both Han and Drokata. If Micah cannot steal it, Han is going to have to retreat into a safe position. It's very unlikely that Pat's going to get an activation with both Han and Drokata this round. Unless Han gets some lucky dodge rolls. Initiative passes to Pat. Micah reveals take initiative. Although Pat should have had an opportunity to play his start of round effects first. He might be playing something like Call the Vanguard. But we'll see what Pat does about this take initiative, which again is a huge take initiative. It looks like the take initiative went through. Now we'll see if these jets can do anything to Han. 5 damage against 2 blocks is not enough to kill. He leaves Han with 1 health, unless he has positioning advantage. Now he has a really tough choice. Does he finish Han off and even risk Han rolling a dodge, or does he try to kill Drokata? In my opinion, he should kill Drokata because Palpatine can guarantee the kill on Han with his tempt. Han does remember to return fire this time, with the maximum roll for 7 against 2 for 5 damage. That would kill the Jet Trooper unless Micah tosses a card to save him. Since he's already activated, he's not the most important figure to save, but Micah is running out of material and needs to keep some figures on the board. This third round will be a complete bloodbath, it's looking like. Micah tosses negation. There's no way that he would be getting initiative next round, so it's not important that he hold on to negation for take initiative. So he does toss it. This allows him to get 6 movement points with the Jet Trooper. He could have moved it to a safe spot. Instead, he chooses to pick up crates. Now, this is where it would be different if this was an in-game tournament that had a time limit. If this was in-game with a time limit, picking up crates would absolutely be the right choice. But since this is a vassal game, it might be a better option to keep that jet alive. So playing on vassal is not necessarily a perfect representation of the tournament scene. Alright, so he has 1 jet trooper attack left. Attacking Han is a risk because Han could roll a dodge. Attacking Drokata is less of a risk, although he could still whiff on the roll. I think Drokata has a little bit more damage output. He is going to go for Han. I guess since Drokata's weakened, he's not worried about him as much. A nice roll, and it does finish Han off. So a lot of points coming Micah's way there. Especially because he's probably going to pick up 2 more crates. Which puts him at 34. He only needs 1 more kill. In fact, if he finishes off Drokata, this game is all his. I'm not sure what Pat's options are, but he definitely has to get out of the way of the yellow Jet Trooper. In fact, he probably just has to completely retreat with Drokata. Palpatine is going to finish him off next round with 2 tempts. So Pat needs to finish this game before the start of next round. A lot of pressure on Pat here. He needs to activate Drokata now, and he needs to kill or run away. Drokata finishes off a Jet Trooper with a Rubble token, this time tossing a card for the strain instead of taking damage. If he had taken a damage there, the game would be over right now. Because the tempt from Palpatine would finish off Drokata from anywhere on the map. Again, this is where we see that him taking those strain as damage is really coming to bite him, because there's no way for him to keep Drokata alive past this round. Past next round. He's actually moving Drokata up. I'm not sure what he's doing, because as soon as Drokata dies, the game is over. He's moving Drokata up, and he's going to attack. I'm not sure who he's attacking. I guess he's attacking the Jet Trooper that had already gone. This attack does 4 damage and a Surge. Surge could either make it 5 damage and 1 to... I suppose if he's attacking the Jet, it would be against the other Jet. Or he could do 6 damage total, which would kill the Jet, which is probably what he's going to do, although this does leave him in a very risky position. He is playing collateral damage. Again, his command deck does not have a lot of versatility, so he needs to get his command cards out while he can. This is probably his last opportunity to play collateral damage. But again, you want to save that card usually for when it's going to finish somebody off. Instead, he just uses it to dish out a little bit of extra damage. His Drokata is actually pretty safe in that spot. Gideon can push him back even further next round. Next activation, Gideon could push him back 2 spaces. So, it's not quite over yet, although I think Palpatine can tempt Drokata and Force Lightning Ned to end the game here, so actually the game's just over. A misplay there by Pat. He should have played a little bit more conservatively with Drokata, and it ends up costing him the game. So a little bit of a anticlimactic finish, but it was a very exciting game. Well played there by Micah, not panicking after some early losses. Ends up clawing his way back into this game, and we see the strength of this 2 Elite Riot Trooper list, even on this map that probably is the worst map for this list. Pat not able to capitalize on a mismatch, and the strength of the Imperials shines. So, Let's see what went wrong in this game. Was it a case of misplays or was it a case of one list being better than the other? I think Pat's list does have some major problems. Like I said, I've experimented a lot with this list. I think Drokata just does not have enough synergy with the rest of the figures. And sometimes it's okay to have one figure that doesn't have synergy, but you also have the Alliance Rangers in there uh, who want their Hunter cards desperately. So if you have your three main attackers can't use each other's command cards, um, it's going to make for a very kind of not versatile list. So, and we did see that because collateral damage didn't get used to great effect, assassinate didn't get used to great effect. I would say those cards were not wasted, but definitely not used optimally. Whereas if you had more units that could make use of those cards, it's a lot easier to put them to better use. On the other side, Micah does get an early reinforcements off uh, for a big swing. He was a little bit lucky that he was able to get it off. He did position his figures in a little bit of a dangerous spot at the beginning, but it ends up not costing him the game. Force Rush, I think, is an interesting choice. I think that is probably the weakest card we saw. He did get a good grenade off against Drokata and Han, who both are very good targets for unmitigatable damage. So, yeah, a nice play by Micah. He set up a really good wall in the middle of the map in round 2, which protected his Palpatine and Jet Troopers, who are really the units he wants to be moving in to do damage. Then he had a very aggressive play with the Jets, which paid off really well for him. Pat probably should have tried to take those aggressive Jets out with Han instead of going for the Riot Troopers that were out of position. I guess sometimes you get tempted to take out figures that have damage on them when they're not necessarily the best targets always. You usually want to focus on figures that can do the most damage to you. Those should be your primary targets. So Pat maybe made a little bit of a dubious choice there, attacking the riots instead. Especially because it didn't block Micah's opportunity to play reinforcements had he had the card in his hand. Also, Palpatine ends up doing a lot of work. Palpatine is one of those figures that, if he's on the board at the end of the game, he's going to be dealing a lot of little annoying damage. And those little pings for 1 damage are much more useful at the end of the game when figures are sitting with very low health left. You saw that it ended up just finishing this game off. Had this game lasted another round, Pat might have been able to claw his way back into it. It's a shame that we didn't get to see what would have happened. I think this game, even though Micah was ahead on points, it could have still been decently close. He did only have his Jet left to attack, plus his Palpatine. So Pat would maybe could have withstood that little onslaught and fought his way back. I think another mistake from Pat is that his 3PO is there on the terminal not doing anything. I think you have to either move your list around 3PO or at least keep 3PO within distance. If anything, a regular smuggler should be the one sitting on the terminal. It's not worth the 2 points to misplace your 3PO. And yeah, Fight Wookiees brings up a good point. Pat's list definitely could have used Hera dishing out that extra damage and surge. Although Drokata did actually do a lot of work. He got some good shrapnels off. He got some decent demolishes off. Again, I think he's a very good unit. I just don't think he fits in any rebel lists right now. And it's a shame because he's a unique figure. He does a lot of things that no one else has done. Especially the way you can choose to use his surges I really like. Um, he's just a fun figure to play, but I cannot figure out a way to fit him into any tier 1 lists right now, so a little unfortunate there. Um, anyway, we finally did get to see the strengths of this Riot Trooper list. Now we got to think about how to beat it. I think the main thing is you have to kill a whole group of Riot Troopers at a time. You can't let them reinforce, or you're pretty much screwed. That extra 7 health is killer, especially when you're running a list that relies on dishing out focused shots, because you only get so many focused shots in a game. So you might feel like you have some strong attackers in round 1 and 2, but your attacks are just getting weaker and weaker as the game goes on. Really, you need to take out Palpatine and kill activations. So maybe there's an answer to this Riot Trooper list in Rebels, but it seems very strong. I'm going to have to get my hands on it myself and see if I can do anything to it. But I definitely see why the Elite Riot Troopers are making such a splash in the meta right now. So anyway, hopefully you guys have gleaned something as well. Maybe you have some ideas for how to beat this deck. Anyway, I guess that'll do it for me tonight. Thanks for watching. Signing off.